Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us at Carolina Conservatives Preachers with a Punch. It's been a joy to do interviews with various people and candidates, and Dr. Nathan Street has been much more busier than I in doing that, and he is actually in the field as we speak. Right now, I want to take you into an interview that we had opportunity to do moments ago with Trasa Cobern from Texas. She is very involved with the Texas GOP, and she sits down and talks with me about the Texas Heartbeat Bill. This is a bill that should be mirrored in every state concerning abortion. And I trust that you'll receive a blessing from her words, her encouragement, and her excitement for pro-life stands. In addition, her name is actually Trasa Robertson Cobern. At the end of the interview, we actually have a little bit of fun because you guessed it, she is Uncle Si's daughter, America's favorite uncle. It was a blessing to interview her, and I trust she'll be a blessing to you as well. God bless you. All right, thank you for joining us. Today we have the honor of sitting down with Trasa Robertson Cobern. And we'll have a little bit more to say about that maiden name in just a moment. But she's very involved in the Texas GOP and the area over there. She's ran for office a couple of times, and she's a believer in the Lord. And I wanted to sit down and talk with her specifically about the Texas Heartbeat Act that came into being last year. It is probably the most outstanding, most rigorous bill that our present administration is fighting and would love to do away with. But to be honest, this is a legislation that should be mirrored across the nation. And it's been a joy to sit down, and it's an honor to sit down with Trasa. And just to let our listeners know a little bit about you, give us your background of service with the GOP in your area and the state of Texas. Anything you'd like to share?
Okay. Well, I got involved in politics in 2016. I decided to run for city council in my little town of about 40,000, and I won that. And in that process, I started meeting a lot of people who were involved in the Republican Party, and they said, you need to get involved on this side. You know, nonpartisan races aside, partisan politics are important. And so I started being involved with that. I became a county, an appointed chair for outreach in the county, and really enjoyed that. Did a lot of work there for a couple of years. I attended the 2018 Texas GOP convention as a delegate. And then that just kind of solidified my interest in party politics. So I've served as a election judge. I've served as the Lincoln Day dinner chair. I've served as a delegate to the 2020 GOP convention, and then I will be a delegate again here in 2022. And then I also, since 2020, I've actually been on the board of Mid-Cities Women's Clinic, which is a pro-life pregnancy center here in our area. And I've been involved with them as their governance chair, and really, really love that organization and love what they do.
Great. Since scheduling this interview, much has transpired specifically around abortion. There's been a leak from the United States Supreme Court in which that opinion that leaked was from Judge Alito. That's not to say that Judge Alito had anything to do with that, but in that leaked opinion, it stated that Roe versus Wade must be overturned. Now, it's important to state that if the United States the Supreme Court of the United States does in fact overturn Roe versus Wade, that would not outlaw abortion. It would rather kick that issue down to the states for them to make their own decision. Having said that, tell us a little bit about the background of the Texas Heartbeat Act.
I first heard about the Texas Heartbeat Bill, as it was referred to before it got passed, about the spring or summer of 2020, when one of our local legislators had said she was going to help co-author this, and that's Stephanie Click. And she would be, she'd be working on a bill to outlaw abortion after a heartbeat is detected. And that's usually about 6 weeks into the pregnancy. And one of the differences about this bill that makes it so unique is that it actually penalizes the abortion providers, and you don't have to have standing to sue them. So it actually creates a policy for people to bring civil suits against an abortion provider, and anyone can do that. Anyone with knowledge of them providing an illegal abortion can sue them. And the cost to the abortion provider is at least $10,000 per incident.
Wow.
Plus their court fees and the lawyer's fees. So it could really just bring up that amount very quickly. And that's been part of why it's been so successful, is that the abortion providers are terrified of the amount of money that they could lose if they continue to provide these abortions.
So to say it's changed business as usual, it certainly has. That's amazing to actually put in that bill and have it passed, that you can sue without standing. I mean, that was the big issue before the Supreme Court wouldn't take up the 2020 ideals of the election, or they didn't have standing. States didn't have standing, which I thought was crazy, but nevertheless, I'm not a justice. But do you, as a mother, as a female leader, do you see anything that should have been added to this provision of this legislation, or do you think it's fine as it is?
I think it's pretty darn good as it is. I think that early into a pregnancy, you can't really determine if there's any exceptions. They usually say exceptions for life of the mother, for example. Usually that early into the pregnancy, you wouldn't have any life of the mother issues.
Right.
Rape or incest, I struggle with that, because I still believe that that's a life. And I know people personally who have been raped or have been in bad situations and have gotten pregnant, and they chose to carry the baby and gave the baby up for adoption. And that's turned out to be a wonderful decision for two families, not just one family. So I understand people's, focus on allowing abortions for rape and incest, but I still think that it's a bad decision for the woman.
Yeah, two wrongs do not make a right.
Exactly.
And of course, they would look at me and say, well, you have no idea, which I don't, but I agree with you. It's still a life. Now, when we think about the speculation of the overturning of Roe versus Wade, how do you, as a political leader, suggest to someone like us in North Carolina who currently do not have anything like this on the books, but would love to mobilize grassroots groups to begin to garner support for this type of bill to our legislature? What would be the first thing that you would suggest for us to do?
I'd say the first thing to do is talk to your local state legislators. So go to your state legislator, your representative, and talk to them about that. If they aren't friendly to the idea, then I say start a petition and bring them a petition that has tons of signatures from people in his or her district.
Yeah.
because that usually makes a difference when they know that a lot of people in their own constituency really support something. That really makes a difference to people. So, and I would say just write your legislators, call them. They do listen to the people. They often don't hear from people about issues that are important to them. So when they do hear from people, that tends to sway their opinions quite a bit.
Yeah. I'm veering off script just a moment, and I promise not to do this, but the question popped in my mind. Do you remember the anticipation and the excitement building up about this bill from when it was introduced to the time that it was actually passed? Do you remember the approximate amount of time, or were there rallies around the state, petitions? Do you remember anything of that?
Well, no, I mean, there were a lot of people excited about it, but I think people were scared to be excited about it because they didn't think it was going to pass. Because
too good to be true.
Too good to be true. And so I think, being on the pro-life pregnancy center side, I know our board was like holding our breath, through the legislative session, because we kept expecting something to happen along the way that was going to derail it. So when it passed, people were just thrilled. And so there was a lot of excitement after it passed, but I think people were just too afraid that it was not going to happen.
Yeah, I remember a meeting. Actually, the name that I had just mentioned a moment ago, Brian Hughes, last fall. And in the introduction of where I was at in the setting that I heard him speak, the person giving the introduction said the bill was so well written legally that hardly anyone could even challenge the bill. Right. I mean, it was so well written. They thought of every loophole. It really took a lot of thought, and I think it was God driven.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you.
The Lord handled it, but it really takes a brilliant mind in the law to do that. So I have to say kudos to them. I hope we have something of that in our state as well. Any idea as far as an estimation how many abortions were actually performed in Texas before this bill went into law?
The last data I have is from 2017, and that number was about 55,000 abortions happened in the year 2017. So if you extrapolate that out, that's a lot of abortions. That's
bigger. That's bigger than the population of your city.
It's bigger than the population of my city. Exactly. We could wipe out Hearst, Texas, and in 1 year, with the abortions that were performed in Texas.
And so that's just one city.
Yep.
Could we even estimate how many children's lives have been saved because of the bill?
Yeah, so Guttmacher, who is a data company that keeps track of some of these things, they actually said that it's saved since September of 2021. It's saved about 2,000 lives per month. So it works out to about 70 lives a day. So you think about that, it's about 20,000 lives since it went into effect last September.
Wow.
Yeah.
So another year and you will almost be up to the number of lives saved.
Right.
Versus the number of lives taken.
It's pretty much cut it in half. It was working about 4,500 a month were being performed, and it's knocked that down to about half of that. So
excellent.
About 2,200.
Wow.
So, yep.
Well, I hear on down the pike, there's a number of conservative states that are looking to mirror this legislation, and we're making noise here in North Carolina, and I believe that we're on schedule right now to get a supermajority. I think I can say it on live, on the air. A supermajority of Republican leadership in the House and the Senate of this state, and then in 2024, if we have a Governor Mark Robinson, which is what we're praying for, I think we can see a turnaround. So pray for us about that, please.
Absolutely.
For North Carolina. Now, I want to
every state in the union
absolutely.
that they can work on this, because like you said, if Roe v. Wade does get overturned at the Supreme Court level, that doesn't outlaw abortion federally. What that does is it just makes it, I'm a big fan of the 10th Amendment, and it basically makes it a 10th Amendment issue where it goes back to the states.
Yeah.
And so, so each state is going to have to make that decision, and 26 states would outlaw abortion if Roe v. Wade is overturned. 13 states already have trigger bills. So that's 13 states that as soon as Roe v. Wade is overturned, they would immediately outlaw abortion in their own state, which is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, outstanding. And that's what we're lobbying, if you will. I hate to use that term, but lobbying in our state to go ahead and enact a trigger bill,
right?
That we already have something in place. So let's really, if we're going to make Satan mad, let's really knock him down the park.
Yes,
hey, I appreciate you talking with me about that. Just a little lighthearted transition here. Your name is Trasa Robertson Cobern.
Yes, sir.
And the Robertson name happens to come from Louisiana. Now, that's not where you're originally from. You're from all over.
Well, yeah, my dad was actually in the military when I was growing up, so I grew up all over the place. I lived in Fayetteville for several years.
He was at Fort Bragg?
Fort Bragg. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
And then we were actually stationed in Germany for 10 years when I was growing up. And the last time we were there was from the time I was 12 till I graduated from high school.
Where I grew up, we were so close to Fort Bragg that when they would practice artillery, we heard it.
Wow.
And it was we didn't complain. We were so glad that these guys are on our side. They're protecting us. But let's talk about your favorite, our favorite uncle, Uncle Si, because if our listeners and viewers haven't caught on, this is Si Robertson's daughter, and everyone knows that name. Tell us a little bit about maybe your first reaction when your parents may have called you and said, we're going to do a reality TV show at the Duck Commander Warehouse. Yeah. Did that actually happen? Or I'm going off the fly here, but I'm just asking.
I was talking with my mom just on a regular call, just called home to check on the folks and see what was going on, talking to my mom. And she said, oh yeah, Willie's got us doing this show. She goes, and it looks like it's gonna kind of be a big deal. And I'm like, Mom, they've done a show before. They had a show on the Outdoor Network, and it was like no big deal for those of us who didn't live in that circle.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I think this one might be a little bigger deal. And so I said, okay, well, we'll see. And then the week before the show was supposed to premiere, I took my son and some friends to the movie theater, and we went to go see the first Hunger Games movie. And before the movie started, the previews came on, and the very first preview was the trailer for Duck Dynasty.
Yeah.
And my boys just start cracking up because they're like, oh my gosh, there's Pumbaa wearing a pair of shorts and, camo shorts and suspenders, and they're like laughing. And the people around them are thinking these kids are crazy because they're talking about that their granddad being up there. And so we knew when I saw how much money they were putting into the show and the premiere of it, I knew something was going to be big. But I still didn't quite understand until at the time I was teaching school, and I was walking down the hallway of my school, and I look up, and there's my dad's face on a kid's t-shirt staring at me. And I thought, this world is surreal. Like, this has gone crazy. I'm looking at my dad on a t-shirt,
You should come to my house. Your dad's on several t-shirts.
Yeah, it's very funny. Well, I'm used to it now, but it was funny at first. It was just a weird experience to see my dad on somebody's shirt,
Yeah. Well, does anybody ever stop you in town? Have you?
Oh yeah, I get sometimes people want to take pictures with me, and I'm like, I'm not famous. Like, why would you want to take pictures with me? And they're like, no, you're famous because you're related. And
Well, you actually did make one appearance on the show.
Yes, I was on season 5's finale.
Yeah,
Yep, was on there. And
my kids seeing you.
My kids have been in several episodes, but they didn't talk or anything. They just were kind of background.
Okay, all right.
Playing with the cousins kind of stuff.
He just celebrated his 74th birthday?
74th. Yep.
And bought his own gift. Somebody sent me the video today.
Yes, my mom sent me the picture of it.
Yeah, well, good. So, what's your father doing in his quote unquote retirement?
Oh, his retirement. Well, he's busier now in retirement than I think he ever was when he was in the military.
Yeah.
He used to come home and take naps every day at lunchtime. So he's not doing that these days. He's really, when Duck Dynasty was on, I mean, he was up filming. He was there for 12-hour days,
Wow.
So it was a pretty grueling schedule.
Wow.
Now it's a little more relaxed, but he still has his podcast. So he's still working every day.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. I'm glad that you took the time out of your busy schedule. It's fun to learn about him. It's fun to learn about your viewpoint of him. Like I say, there's so many questions a lot of people have that may never even get to speak with him, but they've learned from you right now.
Right.
So that's a blessing. So please tell him, my daughter is a future Marine.
Oh,
please tell him we thank him for his service to the country.
Will do.
And that will definitely please her. I'll get points with her for saying that. So now you lived all over the world, obviously, because he was in the military. So, well, how did you get back to Texas?
Well, so I had never lived in Louisiana or Texas. We just always visited Louisiana for, Christmases and summers and things like that. And I had visited Texas, I think, once in my life, because my parents had some good friends who lived up in Mount Pleasant. But I was living in a place called Zweibrücken, Germany, when I was graduating from high school, and started looking at colleges. And my mom came home and she had a brochure and she said, "You will apply to this one school." And I said, "What?" And she said, "They don't even mention admission. They just talk about scholarship money." And she said, "So you'll apply here." She said, "I don't care where else you apply." And that school was Texas A&M. And so I applied there. I applied to 6 other schools, and I was sure that I was going to a small private liberal arts college somewhere up north. And I'm so glad that I did not do that. I ended up going to A&M because they gave me more bang for the buck.
Yeah.
And went for the money, and came out of college with, like $200 in debt. It was pretty awesome.
Wow. Yeah.
And so love it. And my youngest son is actually headed there next year.
Now you're in education right now, correct?
No, actually, I got out of education last year.
Okay.
Stopped teaching at the end of 2021. Sorry.
The last time I talked to you, you were working on a master's degree. I'm sure you're finished with that now. But oh, well, so am I. Well, thank you for talking with us today about the heartbeat bill. Thank you for talking with us about your dad. And everybody knows your family, but I want to say this: we appreciate your family, all of you, for standing for truth and the testimony that you do have. And that goes all the way to you all in Texas too. Thank you for everything you do for us.
Well, thank you.
And
Christians have got to stand up and do what's right.
Yes. And I do. I will ask you to come on later at another time, and let's talk about that, how Christians can be more involved, everyday believers, not just preachers, not just teachers, but everyday believers can be involved. And we have got to be that salt and light to the world. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for listening, and we'll get back to our regular programming.